Welcome to You Know His Name, a 007 podcast. I'm your host, Tony Artiga, and I'm once again joined with my co-host, John Morgan, Rick Rodriguez, and again with our special guest host for the month, Tom Lorenzo of the You Are Missing Out podcast. How's everybody doing today?
Yay!
Going
Yay.
on, boys?
Awesome. So,
Big three, my lord.
number three. So that's a little Shrek reference for you, everybody there. So this episode's a little bit more beyond than what we're used to talking about. We're really glad to have Tom on this website. We're really happy to have We're really happy to have Tom in on this discussion. Given that his podcast starts from 1989 on, when the National Film Registry had its first class of films that we talk about the summer 1989, because the License to Kill is the last summer movie of the Bond canon, and that was a packed summer for monster films, where License to Kill unfortunately got buried, and don't know. I don't know if it's fair to say that it resulted in the following 6-year gap between films of between this and Goldeneye, but it's hard.
I
It's
think
hard not
some
to.
people.
It's a very important piece.
I think some
Let's
people
talk about it.
think that's what it was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Because of the coincidence of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it's easy to it makes sense because of how hard it did bomb in America, but again, not even really bomb, just like it did whatever. But no, there was a lawsuit. They were literally like planning to film a third one, and then the lawsuit shut it down, and they had to just keep dealing with bullshit for 6 years.
I remember as a kid, that's this summer of '89 that we're about to talk about, and I saw quite a bit of the movies we're going to talk about in theaters as a kid. And I remember whenever, I guess maybe in 1990, when License to Kill came out on video, it was like, wait, they made another Bond? So it was like, you weren't even aware. I think maybe a lot of American audience, and I know I was a kid, but even then I was pretty attuned to like getting Starlog magazine, even like starting at age 4, you know what I mean?
I mean, if there's anything that could be said about the year of 1989 for cinema, everything got fucking eaten up by Batman.
Yeah.
And some things still did very, very, very well.
Some things still did very, very well, but like Batman ate everything up. I mean, it took everybody's lunch money. And I mean, we're gonna dive deep into this a little more, but like, if it's funny too, like you look at a lot of these movies in the box office, and like, there's some good stuff. There is good stuff in here, but also like at the time, like if you look at like reviews and this like kind of sentiment from even audiences, a lot of people didn't really jive with a lot of the movies, like other than like Batman. Like they saw shit like, and everything almost kind of felt like disappointing to people at the time. Like
even Last Crusade,
people were like more happy with Last Crusade than some of the other movies, but even still, there was this sentiment of like, oh, it's just rehashing Raiders. They're just going back to safety because Temple of Doom kind of fucked everything up.
There's also just not a lot of spectacle or a lot newer, anything newer to see on the palette when you look at the other movies that it was up against. And Batman just offered up the goods in terms of like new ideas,
Yeah, we never saw this before.
Yeah, just something completely new. There was like an overabundance of sequels or down to earth at home based dramas that I think people were starting to get either overwhelmed with because they were a dime a dozen, or because they weren't reaching very high in terms of offering up something new.
Yeah, this was a big year for the industry hitting a wall of so much of the 80s was about really diving into sequels and merchandising and IP. This was the beginning of all that. And this was a big stumbling block for it. And, as a horror fan, this was also a really big year for the slasher era that dominated the 80s. Everybody just rejected slasher movies outright this year.
I mean,
Elm
they
Street
had been
Yeah.
dead for a while. I mean, to kind of set
Well,
up the
not-
summer.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, not really, to be honest, because the year before was both Halloween 4 and Elm Street 4, and those made a lot of money. And people
But compared to the heyday of the slashers,
Yeah,
you know,
compa-
by
well,
then
but-
it's more a niche crowd. I mean, they're
compared
still
to
doing
the
well
heyday-
compared to budget and stuff.
well, yeah,
But
because Jason is falling.
yeah,
But there was a bit of like, okay, these franchises are at least like resurging a bit. But it's
I think
still
the
at the
video
same time,
market,
it's
the
like-
video market had a lot to do with that. A lot of people probably re-rented the hell out of that.
Definitely.
You know?
But again, it was a case of like they did well in '88, but then in '89
They really do.
greenlit
They really
sequels
do
to all
bust.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they all had sequels like 10 months later, and,
Yeah.
and
With-
they were all low points.
Maybe
And
the
everyone was
exception
like,
of Freddy, not in terms of '89, but it's like 1, 2, 3 does really well. 4 goes even bigger. I think 4 is still the biggest.
yeah, 'cause
Technically,
four
and
was-
then so yeah, they really rush 5, which comes out in
Well,
'89,
they
and
rushed
it's a
5,
total
they rush
drop.
5, they rush Halloween 5, and they rush
Nightmare
Jason
8.
Takes Manhattan.
Or
Yeah.
not Nightmare 8, Jesus Christ. Yeah,
It-
Friday takes my hand.
So it's just really funny how in 1989 they're different. They're different kinds of cinephiles. Different. Obviously, everybody has different strokes for different folks and all that good stuff. But it's just kind of amazing how if you're any sort of cinephile, whether it be that you're like the 89 is a pivotal year for you. Like if you're a superhero fan, Batman. If you're an action adventure fan, Indiana Jones. If you're a fan of like the Oscar drama, Dead Poet Society. I mean, this was also the year of the Disney Renaissance with Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
you
if
just
you
look-
if you're a comedy fan, you can go fuck yourself.
No, when Harry Met Sally.
But that's where it pretty much stops, buddy. You don't want to bring up UHF.
I do want to bring up Honey, I
Weekend at
Shrunk the
Bernie's
Kids.
has a really great place in my heart, but when you go back and revisit, is pretty dry.
Uncle Buck,
I mean,
What the
Honey,
fuck
I
is
Shrunk
it?
the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out in 1989.
Little
That-
Monsters, Monsters
Yeah.
Inc. ripped it off.
There
Just
you
kidding
go.
about Little Monsters.
Rick, you'll appreciate it. Born on the 4th of July was the top was number.
That's my
10.
favorite blockbuster of 1989.
That's one of the best comedies of 1989.
There you
That's what it
go.
sounds like.
So
There's Neil Simon and there's Oliver Stone.
So I just wanna bring up what these are the top 10 movies worldwide that did business, bucko business in 1989. And number 10 is Born on the 4th of July. Number 9 is The Little Mermaid. Number 8 is Ghostbusters 2. Number 7 is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Number 6 is Lethal Weapon 2. Dead Poet Society comes in at number 5. Look Who's Talking comes in at number 4. That's just depressing. Back to the Future Part 2 is number 3. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is number 2. And then number 1 was fucking Batman, the behemoth that was the 89 Batman movie with Michael Keaton and Jack
How?
Nicholson.
They
Fucking
both. If you look at Batman and Indiana, like damn, those are big numbers for 1989.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Huge.
And also, like, imagine a box office today where number 10 is a movie about a crippled Vietnam War veteran.
Right.
screaming people. And number 5 is a-
Anti-war film, right?
And number 5 is a movie about Robin Williams teaching students.
I mean, yeah.
Like,
I guess a different
Scale,
era
you know?
in terms of, like, I mean, Bourne probably just that Tom Cruise star power, and this was still Stone, still riding his popularity from Platoon and stuff like that. You
Well,
know,
it's just a very polarized time in terms of who's visiting the box office, who's going to see the movies, because you see.
I think you have more diverse people going.
Well,
Like,
it is more diverse, but that's what I'm saying is like across the board, like the pool for movie producers is so much wider because of the way the market opened it up significantly for VHS.
we're talking some strong movies too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm saying like on the flip side of that year and all the top-notch movies you're talking about, you've got movies like Death Spa, Silent Night, Deadly Night. You've got even like Shocker. Wes Craven's Shocker came out the same year.
Karate Kid Part 3.
Yeah, Sleepaway Camp 3.
Police Academy 6.
You've got a lot of movies that are already set for the video market and are
Right.
literally just hitting theaters to just fill a quota and try and reclaim most of the production budget back. But they know why they made this movie. And so you have a really huge market surge of movies in theaters at that time. So even most times while you're talking about the summer releases, the movies that were in theaters at that time,
Yeah.
there was a fucking sea of domestic releases that were released very regionally at the same time that License to Kill was going to see theaters as well. So while you had a movie theater that was going to play Batman, The Burbs, License to Kill, that theater owner may have also banked in and said, I think Dead Pit is going to see a big gross because I saw the trailer.
But it's interesting too, like looking at these box office numbers and how like Born on the 4th of July and Baby's Day Out and Dead Poet Society, like these movies are still like a big hit because when people connected to them, they'd go to see it at the
You mean
theater.
Look Who's Talking, right?
Look Who's Talking. I'm brain.
No, I was like, wait, Baby's Day Out was also 89.
I wish. Joe Montana gave a great performance. But like those kind of movies that we're like looking at and being surprised about, it's like those movies today are now Netflix things. They're Netflix shows.
Well, how many of them did we all grow up with on video?
But like people had no choice. Like TV wasn't what it is now, where like TV was like still kind of like a cheap, just whatever thing you did. Like there was no cinematic quality. You went to the movies to see something
movie, right?
To see
to
something that's
what
kind
you
of
wanted.
quality.
Yeah.
Well, you paid to see what you want, but like there was a different quality to a comedy in '89 on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Harry Met Sally, you're not comparing that to like fucking Perfect Strangers.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that movie is also a very mainstream sort of answer to say like a Billy Wilder movie like The Apartment or something.
And this is still the era of real. I mean, yeah, we still have movie stars, but this is the era of like movie stars did a lot to get asses in seats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Combine that with, and they didn't have this terminology then, but something like Indiana Jones, it's like it's Harrison Ford and fucking Sean Connery in one movie. Holy shit, we're all going,
Yeah.
And it outsells License to Kill.
Yeah, which goes to Batman. Holy shit, Jack Nicholson is in Batman as the Joker and Michael Keaton. What the fuck, So
I mean,
it was, yeah.
If I can go down before I go down the Batman rabbit hole, because I can, just gonna go back to John's comedy assertion. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, February 1989.
There are a lot of dominating comedies, and I really shouldn't have said that. I mean, you've got Turner and Hooch coming out that year.
Yeah,
Burbs, baby.
That even if I don't give a shit, and the Burbs, even if I don't give a shit about something like Turner and Hooch. Yeah. I mean, I think the independent marker in particular gets overlooked
Do
because
the Right Thing's Universal, but it's still a low budget movie, and Sex, Lies, and Videotape is in here.
The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
It was, I think, for a year for movies, besides just looking at the summer, you just had so many different tiers.
Those two were summer. That's crazy.
And production styles. Like you've got your A-list big budget productions, your tentpole films. Then you have your B-list productions hitting theaters. Yeah. We don't have this. We're not familiar these days with a medium budget production competing with A-list.
Well, pictures. That's a dead thing.
I mean,
but you look at the slate for that year and you see how like there's mid-level comedies, then there's A-list comedies, then there's C-list comedies,
then there's Heathers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I may, just to read off a few movies that are really popular now, or they're kind of cult movies, and this is just the month of April. Mm-hmm. You have Sam Neill and Nicole Kidman and Billy Zane in Dead Calm, which is a thriller that a lot of people admire. You have Major League, which baseball and comedy fans enjoy. Of course, in terms of romance, Say Anything is a classic. For cult stuff like Van Damme, you have Kickboxer, and then of course you have Field of Fucking Dreams in April. These are all like preliminaries to a huge.
Look at this fucking summer. Pet Cemetery. I think that came out the same day as Field of Dreams.
Talk about having variety.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing. It's like it doesn't matter where you lie in a cinematic landscape in terms of where your tastes are, in terms of what you're passionate about, about where you fall in and like how you feel about the cinema, the the history of cinema, 1989 was, chances are that 1989 was a year where a movie that's important to you came out.
Something.
Yeah,
There's definitely something for
something.
everybody.
You could hit the multiplex. Multiplexes are starting to explode in the 80s. You can go to your local multiplex.
You want to watch?
Look at this.
You want to watch a Tom Selleck movie? Bam, Innocent Man. You want to watch a you watch a Don Johnson thriller? Bam, Dead Bang. You know, it's just so many.
Yeah, I mean, look at this Fright Night.
I mean, me, Tony, and Rick all worked at Alamo, and
so did John.
I don't know. I didn't know that.
Why don't you know my?
Why don't you know my life?
Why don't you even know my name?
We all worked there, and we all felt like, okay, it's kind of got a better selection of movies than like an AMC, but like it's still not the variety Alamo could have on a given day is not even close to what you would get back in the 80s. Like, this is insane.
No, I mean, look
literally
at this.
2 days. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if this is a very deep cut probably for a lot of people, but literally 2 days after Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade comes out, a Clint Eastwood movie comes out, Pink Cadillac. Like, what the fuck? Like, Roadhouse comes out the week before Indiana Jones. These are all movies. I mean, not Pink Cadillac, but this is still movies people still talk about.
June 2nd, you could do a double feature of Dead Poets Society right into Vampire's Kiss. Like,
and hey, if you waited a few days later, Star Trek V: The Final Frontier.
All right, well, nobody wants to watch that.
I do want to mention that for
as a Star Trek fan, I mean, just a real quick aside, that is a dark horse because the previous one, Voyage Home, was such a big hit, and kind of like License to Kill, they released it during the summer where I think maybe they're just like thinking they can compete because the last one was so big and it just gets buried.
I mean,
buried.
I do find it kind of funny that for such a sequel heavy summer, there's this much variety because
the sequels are big. There's sequels to big movies.
Yeah. I mean, look at this.
Ghostbusters, for fuck's sake. Ghostbusters was the second biggest movie of this year, I think, under Beverly Hills fucking Cop. So. Bam.
I mean, which also is speak of fucking wild that an R-rated action comedy was #1 movie of the year.
Okay,
and
this is
the family-friendly Bill Murray sci-fi comedy was #2.
Okay, this is crazy to me. This is crazy to me. I did not know this. I knew they came out the same year. I did not know that Batman and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out the same weekend.
And Honey, I Shrunk the Kids did well.
Did very well. Do the Right Thing came out the weekend after.
Oh, Batman sold out. Let's go see Rick Moranis.
Oh my God, The Karate Kid Part 3. That's just funny.
Do the Right Thing sold out. Let's go see Karate Kid
Part 3. Yeah.
Oh my God! Imagine taking a family going to see Karate Kid 3 and it's sold out. And let's go see this. Do the Right Thing.
It sounds like it's a moral
interesting
movie.
Though. Tom, you were bringing up the whole concept of the multiplex and how that really influenced. And it's like, the way movie theaters are laid out these days with multiple theaters. What they'll do is they'll just get the biggest movie and they'll put it on multiple theaters so that everybody has access to that theater.
Everybody has 5 different theaters.
We'll put Star Wars on 3 of our biggest theaters, and then we'll put the other movies on the other theaters. But back in the days in the multiplex, what they would do is all the theaters generally, this is the era where like malls were on the uprise in terms of like culture. What they would do is they just try and fit as many movies in the movie theater as they possibly could. All the theaters were generally looked at as like, it's a theater. They're the same. They fit as many people as that one. We're going to show Troop Beverly Hills on this screen, Police Academy 6 on this screen, Uncle Buck on this screen, Cutting Class on this screen, Halloween 5 on that screen. And
imagine being a fan of all of those franchises.
I mean, it's just.
Do I watch Lethal Weapon or Batman or Police Academy?
There was just something to watch for anyone when they would come to the theater. And that was the promise when you came to the movie theater box office. You didn't order your tickets online. You didn't spend a lot of time thinking. People would walk in off the street and say, I'm going to just step in and watch Nightmare on Elm Street 5. you know, and
That's-
they wouldn't
yeah.
think about it, and they would just see what they were going to get themselves into.
I mean,
And
yeah.
people weren't overwhelmed with marketing. Nowadays, we're
Just
very
a
accustomed.
TV commercial
Yeah, sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's a radio spot or something.
from the director of First Blood.
Yeah.
Weekend at Bernie's.
That's so true. So here's something funny. Because earlier in the episode, John mentioned that Peter Pan, or maybe it was in our pre-episode talk. John mentioned that Peter Pan was re-released. Also, side note, Gone with the Wind was also re-released.
I
around
probably
this time
saw
as well.
that then. I probably saw Peter Pan this same
Yeah.
summer.
Check it
Jesus
out.
fucking Christ.
Not only was it re-released that summer, it was re-released on the same weekend that saw When Harry Met Sally and also License to Kill. So
What's that?
it's some small picture with I don't know if you ever heard of the
Sadly, I
James
think
Bond
that's
film.
probably what a lot of people said.
Yeah.
That's like looking at it like License to Kill, Bond. Oh, the new Lethal Weapon, you know?
You know, I really hate to admit it, you know, being someone that enjoys James Bond movies, but like you want to compare it to everything else on the slate, it's definitely less impressive than, you know, the set pieces that you're offered up in movies like,
I mean,
like
yeah.
I'm looking here and like Leviathan and Deep Star 6 were both put out in theaters at the same time.
In terms of like big movies, I mean, it just shows. I think James Bond. It's how many 3 decades old by that point. It's
a little over that, yeah.
Yeah, Indiana Jones. Even though, yeah, Tom's right. There was like, oh, it's Raiders retread. I think critics were mixed on it, but audiences really enjoyed the hell out of it because it was like the emotional one. It was, and Sean Connery and Harrison Ford's banter and stuff, and it still delivered the goods. It's the movie I really love. But then here comes Batman. Ghostbusters 2 comes out in only a week before Batman, and even Ghostbusters 2 does okay compared to what the first one made, though. It's a substantial drop.
Yeah, it's a drop, but it's still one of the top 10 highest grossing movies.
Yeah,
of the year.
but Batman just takes over, and I think by then, the week before License to Kill comes out, Lethal Weapon 2, which I know people can't really see that now, but like Lethal Weapon 1 was a movie that did well, but on home video, it blew the fuck up.
Yeah.
And so now it was like everybody went to go see Lethal Weapon 2 in the theaters. So that's 3 really big movies, and all of a sudden this 30-year-old franchise
At this point,
with a movie that is kind of retreading.
Yeah,
it's kind of retreading things that audiences have been seeing since '85 in terms of drug action movies. You know,
there was just so much more to see in theaters at the time than another old James Bond movie.
It just got lost.
So. And you're right. And so I kind of want to go down a little bit down a rabbit hole on the 89 Batman, not just because and I'm just being completely honest here.
Why, Tony? Why do you want to talk about Batman?
Because I fucking love Batman. But
you don't say.
I know. It's almost as if I didn't have
Show them your tattoo on your ass.
I don't have one.
Jesus Christ. Steven Spielberg had 2 movies this year.
Yeah.
One we don't talk about.
Yeah.
One that doesn't exist.
What was the other one? Not 1941.
You want to say it, Tom?
Always.
There it is.
Oh boy.
His glorified fucking TV spinoff from Amazing Stories.
All right.
It's not a good movie. It's definitely one of his worst.
Well,
it's definitely a movie that doesn't exist anymore. And you've made the joke before. From the director of First Blood comes Weekend at Bernie's. Ted Kotcheff had 2 movies this year.
All right, but I do want to talk about Batman because fuck it, I love Batman.
Oh, can't we talk about Robert Wise's last?
No, we're talking about Batman, John. We're talking about Batman. Enough. We're talking.
Robert Wise wanted to remake West Side Story as a movie.
I don't care. I want to talk Batman, goddammit, because goddamn this fucking movie. But that's the thing. Tom mentioned earlier how Batman literally gobbled up the marketplace. Like it was kind of the first real event movie in the sense that the movie almost became inconsequential. It was marketed to be an event. It's not like a Jaws or a Star Wars where the movie came out and became an event after the fact. But
I don't know. I
No,
think there's this marketing balance where Batman falls into the same category as a blockbuster film like Jaws and
no, it doesn't. It doesn't because here's the thing. So on the
You mean you're talking about
Diamond,
like when how they planned it?
yes. So on the
That is a
Diamond,
different thing.
yeah, on the Diamond edition of the Blu-ray, of the '89 Batman film, they were talking about how what was different about the marketing and the prep for Batman as a cinematic event. It was very different because you look at something like Jaws, even something like Star Wars. Star Wars became a huge hit, but they were taken kind of by surprise by the success. So much so, like, you remember, like, the action figures weren't ready to go until like not even for the Christmas of that year. So they were kind of taken aback, like, oh shit, like they didn't market that movie to be like the next big movie event. You know, Jaws and Star Wars are kind of the godfather of the blockbuster, but Batman was kind of the first time where they were like, okay, we are going to market this like it's a blockbuster. We're going to prepare and have merchandise on the shelves like it's a blockbuster even before the movie comes out. And to the point almost where even some of the execs admitted that it almost didn't matter whether how the movie ultimately turned out. It actually turned out pretty good, but it was marketed to be a cinematic event, which I am sure contributed to
Yeah,
the
they were like
oversaturation of the
primed.
marketplace. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like priming that movie to be what you're not. I mean, it's so clear they're spending, to quote,
I
you know,
mean,
Hammond, spend no expense. You know, you
Yeah,
get
no,
Jack
yeah.
Nicholson,
Yeah.
you're gunning for big shit
I
because
mean,
Nicholson even then is still very, very popular movie star
Yeah.
in
I
that
mean,
time. You know,
this is, I mean, what, like the year before they just put out the fucking poster with the logo on it, and
bam,
just that logo just everywhere on everything, shirts,
that
backpacks,
perfect
fucking,
shiny sheen on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it just everybody's attention. And then they released a teaser, and just like that was like one of the first real, like, a year out, we're gonna hype the shit out of this thing.
Yeah.
and if you want to bring up marketing, compare that to the marketing scheme for License to Kill, which is a fucking ball drop.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a
Not in the
disaster.
it's like it's a joke because the other thing that
did
really
you look at it? Did you look it up? Like,
well, I found some information about them originally titling the movie License Revoked.
Yep.
And then they
Right.
had to pull their marketing material and just cobble together some quick photo images of what would become the License
I
to
read
Kill
that
marketing
they had
campaign.
legendary Bob Peak do a poster, but they couldn't use it because it was license revoked on it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's absurd, really, the money that was wasted to just figure out what the goddamn movie was going to be called. And also, even more confusing, that they settled on this title, whereas because there had already been a TV movie released in the United States with Denzel Washington called License to Kill in 1984.
You serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they just made it more confusing for themselves because it was already something that was in the air
It's
and
not a
like
distinct title for
no,
a Bond movie.
and
No.
also like it's I mean it's a very kind of it's a throwaway title in some respects because
Yeah.
the license to kill means nothing exclusive to this story. When they revoke his license to kill, it doesn't even mean anything. Still keeps to killing people.
Well, it used to
Yeah.
mean it was a line I think they say in Doctor No. You know,
Yeah.
you have a license to kill, and you know, not a license to blah 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 or something like that. But it's still kind of nondescript. It doesn't evoke mystery like even the Living Daylights. It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Well,
It
it's
was
not enough.
It was just
you
a
know?
major blunder in terms of handling the marketing campaign for License to Kill compared
Uh-huh.
to everything else that had a real plan out there on the market at that time.
Lethal
Especially
Weapon
No,
2,
for sure.
you know?
I mean, you even look at the one sheet for License to Kill, like abysmal.
Mhm.
It looks photoshopped.
It
With,
is.
Mm.
I mean,
you
it's
know,
not
essentially, I mean, the '89 equivalent
digitally.
of Photoshop, but
Yeah.
yeah, it looks
Mostly a
pasted
photo.
together.
It's a photo edit job as
Yeah.
opposed to doing the very nicely, like in Living Daylights is a beautiful poster, and
Yeah.
the marketing campaign for that movie was tops.
Yeah, the Living Daylights
Yeah.
poster looks epic.
Yeah,
Oh, it looks great.
it
It looks
promises a
fantastic.
lot, and at the time, really like, especially even at the 80s at that time in the late 80s, you know, the movie poster did a lot to sell the movie.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really good point. The poster often could be just as iconic.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
And really
And
did
they had
promise
learned
everything.
that. They had learned that. So it was a
Yeah.
real mistake.
Especially
on their
something
part.
like Indiana Jones, where
Yeah.
it's just
No, for
Drew
sure.
Struzan, you know.
Mhm.
I mean,
doing his stuff.
you can't go wrong with Drew Struzan.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, as much as the movie goddamn sucked, Nightmare on Elm Street 5 had a great poster. I mean,
Right.
they had
Did.
very
The baby carriage and him
Yeah.
shushing, you know.
those
Yeah.
Elm Street movies always had great posters because it's just like, all right, let's just show some crazy images to get people in. Like, oh,
They
whoa,
were
what the fuck
they were
is this?
surreal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They had nothing to do with the movie basically, but it was just like some surreal fucking nonsense.
Well, sometimes
Yeah.
it would be like that. Like surreal is definitely the word. Like it would have that dreamscape style imagery where it's very abstract and they're in this just very indescribable dreamlike landscape.
Well, yeah.
And
I
you
remember,
see
I
a
remember
big
three.
hand emerging out of the horizon, and like
Yeah, I
Freddy's
remember
mad at-
3 is his blades, and they're walking on it towards his face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
right.
That's so
have- I
cool.
own that
That's
poster.
yeah. You know.
You know, and if I could throw in iconic Bond posters very quickly, just to rewind, one of the most iconic Bond posters is from one of the movies that like nobody talks about, but For Your Eyes Only, with like Roger Moore framed with the woman where she's like in the extreme foreground with her legs and she's got the crossbow at the end. Like that is an image that is consistently parodied. When people think Bond posters, that's kind of one of the first ones they talk about, and it's not even one of the more well-regarded Bond films.
It's a very simplistic
Yeah.
poster design, but
Yeah.
it does offer up that
It's offering
kind of
action,
thrill
adventure, and
Yeah.
sex.
and
which is
intrigue.
everything you
know?
want
It's
in a
giving you
Bond
kiss,
film,
kiss,
yeah.
and bang, bang.
There you go.
It's promising a lot, but not showing too much.
No,
I mean,
for
Jesus
sure.
Christ, even Jason Takes Manhattan has a better goddamn poster than License.
I
to
think the
Kill.
poster.
God,
I think
yeah.
the movie doesn't live up to the poster.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't. I
That
mean,
was
This
the
is an era
time.
where this is the era where the posters were sometimes better than the goddamn movies.
Right.
I mean-
Well, or when the movie poster, I mean, that was always a rule. And it's funny, Tom, you know, just before Rick joined our call and everything, I was mentioning Roger Corman and how much I'm a fan of his and stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's a man who built his entire career out of the model of like, you know, creating promises, not just to the audience, but to the people who are going to potentially invest in the movie, because the movie's not made yet. The poster is the concept, and the
Yeah.
concept being the idea of, you know, this is what you're going to build up your audience's anticipations for. So even before the movie be made, most times he'd be out there marketing and promoting the idea to raise funds based on a poster image.
Hey, I got a
And-
title. You want to invest?
Yeah,
I'm
the
like, oh, yeah,
title's
that's a great title.
Death Race 2000, and like the guy can already imagine the fucking poster, you know, like that's
Dollar
the
signs.
brilliance of his whole production model. And once the studio started taking that and creating the blockbuster, you know, and basically stealing his model and building it up to be more than that. I mean, you look at all the posters that came out of that year. I mean, when you look at the simple one sheet for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, it
Yeah.
promises you everything that you get in the movie. And that's more than even Roger Corman could deliver on most times.
Yeah, and
Even Ghostbusters 2.
yeah,
It tells you, look, Ghostbusters 2.
They're
the ghost-
back.
Yeah, even the ghost is fucking saying 2. You know?
Even the ghost
Yeah.
knows.
what and wasn't there? I mean, that's the thing. That's why I think like, you know, Ghostbusters 2 and Batman was also kind of like the rise of the very, very super simplistic teaser poster, because like,
Well, Ghostbusters 1 is the proto. It's just their logo.
no, for sure, but Ghostbusters 2, it's like, it's the ghost with a 2. All you need to know, it's the second Ghostbusters.
Well, you know,
film.
I didn't really think of
Yeah.
it. Ghostbusters really set the groundwork up for the marketing for Batman.
I'll even say this. I think even
Well,
maybe
but-
Superman, where it's just the logo in
Yeah.
the sky and then
Yeah.
that beautiful tagline,
No,
"You'll
for
believe
sure.
a man can fly."
Yeah,
I mean, Jesus
exactly.
Christ, that just like I can't imagine being a kid and just probably like religious, like
I-
whoa, like that a Superman movie.
I do
you know?
think that the teaser poster for Batman hit before Ghostbusters 2, but not
I mean
by
Ghostbusters.
much.
I mean Ghostbusters 1.
Yeah,
One.
yeah, I know where you're. I know you're talking about Ghostbusters 1.
shit,
John.
Ghostbusters, that Ghostbusters logo for decades has been still one of the most
Still.
recognizable logos
Right.
around the world. Like
Yeah.
some years it's only number 2 behind Nike, where it's
Right.
just like
Right.
Yeah.
Which is ironic too, because you know the Ghostbusters logo is the parody of the whole like no smoking.
And
sign.
they wear Nikes in Batman.
There you go. There you go. But
Well,
yeah,
I think Batman really, I mean, it's not the logo. It's that Batman logo, so it's that same kind of Superman promise. And I think the design specifically of the logo on that poster is fantastic. And I do remember subsequently it said Nicholson, Keaton, and that logo, and it was like, audiences, how could they not go?
You're just talking about like thought. Like if only there was that level of thought into the marketing for License to Kill, other than Timothy Dalton.
They didn't even have a shot. And I'm even
title.
And I'm even looking at Lethal Weapon 2. This is a boring poster. It's just Mel Gibson and Danny Glover looking at the camera with like a kind of smirk of both of them, and then Gibson's holding a gun. But that's the thing. It's like Mel Gibson, Danny Glover. The magic is back. Right. Lethal Weapon 2. It's like right there. People were going to like, just go.
It just has the smugness to say, you already know.
Yeah, you're fucking coming. Yeah, you're coming to the party.
Exactly.
You love the first one,
But that's a problem with License to Kill. They can do a photo edit job like Lethal Weapon 2, and the marketing style is very similar in some manners, but they can't pull off the promise that they deliver with the Lethal Weapon 2 poster because we just fucking seen it all. And when you want to compare the License to Kill marketing to what they had just the movie before or for that,
it's a real shame.
Yeah, it really sucks.
Especially because it's in the Keys. It's a different environment. To have Bond in that a really well-designed poster where Bond is in jungle and silhouetted with like over like Sanchez looking down, something, I don't know, this something creative and expressive and wild, because you're dealing with drugs and shit and double crosses.
It's funny that they, you said Bob Peak was supposed to do the poster and they had to fuck it up, and we got to get something like even shit ass Star Trek 5 had a great Bob Peak poster.
Yeah, like, that looks like legendary because it's I remember it's like the ship coming through and then underneath.
And then you got Shatner
and Spock.
And Spock on either side of it, and it's just like it's got this like beam of light like design, and it's like that movie's a piece of shit. And if you watch it, you'd think nobody put any thought into this fucking thing, but you look at this poster, you're like, holy shit, this is crazy, man.
It looks fantastical and adventurous and mysterious and all. Yeah.
I mean, License to Kill looks like a fucking like not even canon, like somebody some B-rate fucking huckster in Florida made an action movie and just slapped some shit together.
It literally, the only thing that makes you think James Bond is the fact that it literally fucking just says 007 on it.
That's it.
Otherwise, you'd be like, what is this?
I'm looking at other movies that were released that year and just remembering the poster art, and like, it's a funny case because you look at the poster art for Leviathan and it's nothing that interesting.
But you got that deep sea mystery.
Yeah, but the movie's actually decent as a B movie ripoff of The Abyss or whatever was going to compete at that time, and
which also came out that year.
Yeah, and Deep Star 6 also cashing in.
Well, that's a whole nother podcast. The three undersea horror thriller.
But I'm saying like they all subscribed to a similar marketing campaign. And then who also released a movie that same year was Roger Corman, and he came out with a movie called The Terror Within. And I know from my own research that movie is a remake that has been remade by Roger Corman literally 4 times. And this is the 4th version of that movie he put out.
Alien?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just Alien, but I mean, he remade his ripoff of Alien 4 fucking times. And this is the 4th time he put the movie out. But I'm saying he even knew how to remarket the same fucking idea again. And what does he do? He does the hand-painted, mysterious artwork with the hand reaching out. And I just bought the tape of it recently, and it's like, that is really what you need to get people into the theater, is just don't give away too much. Create a level of mystery. And,
I mean, back then, yeah, I would agree.
But now, if you're looking at a movie like License to Kill and it's just photos of people with guns, you're just like, okay, but and what? See, I've got Nightmare on Elm Street 5 looking in front of me like something really prolific. And this is just.
And that summer, I have my cop thriller already. I got Lethal Weapon 2 right here.
That's right. There's enough to sort of satiate anyone's palate.
It's sad.
Yeah, Lethal Weapon 2, literally a week before.
Right.
Yeah.
It's sad because it's like, it's still James Bond. And I know we all like Bond. So it's like, you don't want to see Bond like And I like all the movies we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, some of them I really love. And so, but to see like a James Bond movie just like become an also ran, that's just really sad.
Yeah, that's really what happened. The kind of the tragic fate of this movie. That really it's kind of upsetting, but at the same time, it does serve that lesson. It's like you
can't rest on your laurels.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
That's literally
And that movie really did. I mean, they took the relative success of Living Daylights and they took it for granted and just said, "Oh, yeah, we switched Bonds. People seem to like it. We'll be fine." And,
Another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to happen. You needed to put a little more thought into this shit. And,
just more passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
especially that summer. I wonder if a lot of people really did underestimate how big Batman was going to be.
Oh, nobody. If anybody expected
sure.
it, I mean, just look at the movie. Like literally, look at the month it came out in. No, these movies would not have been in that month if they even expected it to be this. Like, Karate Kid 3 would have moved easily because there's no way Columbia thought that was gonna fucking compete with anything.
Yeah.
Fucking maybe Honey I Shrunk the Kids would have stayed for counter programming, but
Yeah.
that succeeded being counter programming, so I guess that's a win for Disney.
Ghostbusters 2 definitely would have moved. Star Trek 5 probably would have moved because they definitely thought, oh, people like 4.
Yeah, and Star Trek is another. I think only other one that was released in summer was Star Trek 2, if I have that correct. So it wasn't like it's not a summer's franchise,
Not really.
Not until the reboot or whatever you want to call it in 2009 is it a summer action thing,
I think the official name is the Kelvin timeline. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Whatever.
The June would have looked completely different if anyone could have even imagined Batman doing half of what it did, and the fact that it did fucking almost $500 million.
Hulk Hogan's No Holds Barred.
What about Hard to Be a God? Kidding.
You see that?
But Batman, it's insane because even if you take the success of the first Superman into account, that doesn't even come close.
No, not at all.
To what Batman did. Not even close.
Yeah, I mean, it was the one unexpected piece of the puzzle that year for other studios when they saw how much stock Warner Brothers was investing into that movie.
I mean, Lethal Weapon 2 does great. Indiana Jones, obviously.
Well, and Warner Brothers was counting on that as well because of the money that they.
Oh shit, that's Warner Brothers too. So they fucking clean.
That's right.
Yeah, man.
They dominated that year,
10.
but they were counting on Lethal Weapon 2 to be a success, so that they could take the risk on Batman.
Wow.
And that's the really bizarre thing about that setup and the risk they were taking. It was a very, very calculated risk. They were willing to make strong.
They must have been
decisions.
like, we're in the morning, just fucking.
And they owned the rights to that song too,
having a big party with Nicholson and Gibson and Glover and Keaton all dancing in this room. They fucking.
I mean, the fact that Back to the Future 2 finished in 3rd place.
Right? Another one. The first movie's huge. Yeah.
There's no way Universal expected Back to the Future 2 to not be the biggest movie that year.
Right.
Yeah.
They had no. I mean, they could have made.
I bet Columbia too with Ghostbusters. With Ghostbusters 2.
Ghostbusters 2 is a big disappointment for Sony compared to the first one.
Yeah.
But there's maybe Universal thinks Indiana Jones will overtake it because people love Indy and 80s is really Spielberg is in the fucking pocket in that decade. But
yeah.
They did not expect to be number 3, and they did not expect their number 2 movie in the top 10 to be fucking Born on the 4th of July.
Jesus, tell me about it.
I mean, it really is just.
Hey, para anti-war plegics were in, man.
I mean, honestly, probably the only movie that landed where anyone even close to expected it to be was Indiana Jones, because it's like, oh, number 2, that's not that far off from number 1, and it still made an insane amount of money. Everything else is just who expected this? like you expect some of these movies to be fucking hits, but it's also like
yeah, and even credit to Honey I Shrunk the Kids. I mean, yeah, it comes
Yeah.
out Day of Batman, it's counter programming, but it does really fucking well, and it becomes kind of a little bit a part of the parlance of people. It's like,
they make a
Honey, I
theme park.
Shrunk the Kid. You know, like you kind of say that as a joke, like you're in your backyard playing around, pretending you're fighting a joke.
It became a part of Disney's theme park for a while.
Right, exactly.
I mean, and really, again, we go back to it, but Look Who's Talking being almost $300 million.
That
Like,
They're so hung up on that one. It's so funny.
No, but because that like nobody expected it.
No.
I mean, it John Travolta was in the shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Kirstie Alley was just making this thing on a hiatus from Cheers. This is like you got the guy from Moonstruck doing the voice of a baby. Like Die Hard's a year old, barely a year old when this movie comes out. Like,
But I wonder if that's what kicks it, is the Willis factor. It's because probably by then,
Yeah,
Die Hard's on video, and so now it's taken on a new,
I've heard-
even more life. You know,
I've heard people from the time talk about it, and that it seems like the big thing that really connected for Look Who's Talking was that this was a big era for like single moms and like unmarried moms, and kind of making a movie about that wasn't like, oh, look at this idiot, she's got a kid and she's not even married. It's just like,
that's an interesting point, because you actually do
that's
have a couple
actually
of
really good
comedies
point.
that are about parenting in general. Even
and
Mr.
she's like
Mom,
a working mom, and she's like a working mom, like
Yeah.
the
she's a
one with
working
Diane
mom,
Keaton.
and she's like a working mom, and she's like kind of flirting around with this shithead taxi driver played by John Travolta.
So
And like it's got these two babies talking. Like you got a baby just like being like the Greek chorus of this movie.
being
Like,
very Bruce Willis moonlighting style.
man, I
Moonstruck also,
remember.
yeah.
I just remember then the sequel. Fucking, like I think it was Roseanne Barr who plays his
Yeah.
sister. Oh God.
At the end of the
Listen,
first movie, it's Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably that. Well, that's probably what it was then. It's like you got in two movies, you have something for the kids and something for the parents.
Yeah.
Because then it's the half of the movie is a romantic comedy, essentially.
And you can't discount the fact that it's directed by Amy Heckerling. She did Fast Times, so like she kind of just had a good touch,
right,
from like that period into like Clueless and shit. Where,
right.
like she was kind of like she kind of hit a vein 3 times in her career, and like like a 10-year span.
She was just very topical. She just wanted to focus on things that were relevant.
I got a soft spot for Look Who's Talking, those movies, just because they were movies I watched as a fucking kid.
Travolta dances.
He fucking dances. He dances with a baby. That captured. And again, like I say, this is now a fucking Netflix series, or even like an NBC series by Mike Schur. Look at the cute babies talking about these idiots falling in love, and it's like,
let's not talk about the talking baby
Tom, the fact that you
subgenre.
said that, it's being developed right now.
Right now,
I would think the Baby Geniuses series of movies has pretty much prevented that from ever becoming a possibility.
You wait.
but like this shit isn't particularly cinematic, which means nobody would see it in a theater today. But back then, it's like, I mean, it's got a better production values than Tom Hanks and Drag. We'll go see it.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, for all the reasons that you pointed out, and Tom, I think I would probably think that you nailed it most in the head. But again, there are a lot of these movies that kind of underperformed, but still did well. So my thing is, like, what happened with James Bond? Because if you were to ask anybody around that time, I would imagine, what's going to make more money? The baby talking movie with John Travolta, who hasn't had a hit movie in, at this point, probably well over 10 years, or a James Bond movie? You don't even know what the Bond movie...
It took James Bond out back and put a bullet in its head.
I know,
like, it wasn't even close. Like, that's the craziest thing.
It was like Tim Robbins in Mystic River.
It did more than double. It did more than double a James Bond's box office. That's insane.
Yeah.
And and another thing, like, I bet if you ask any of our parents, like, Ma, Dad, you remember Goldfinger? Oh, hell, I remember Goldfinger. You remember Thunder? Oh, yeah, I remember that. You remember Spy Who Loved Me? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Remember View to a Kill? Yeah, I remember that. Like, do you remember License to Kill? Huh?
Yeah.
Actually, Rick.
They don't know about it.
Actually, Rick. I had a different experience, but it's almost more to your point. So I don't think my parents were the outliers in this. My parents did see both Dalton films in the theaters. My dad is a diehard James Bond fan. We also need to remember Timothy Dalton was not a popular James Bond.
He's not
No.
liked.
He was not
No.
liked. Like my yeah.
His movies were never played on TV.
No.
Any of my exposure before going through all of them before Skyfall, I literally had no conception of Dalton as Bond because I never saw even like footage of Dalton as Bond.
I
Like,
definitely
just
never
even
saw
flipping
License.
through-
I think I saw Living, but I definitely never saw License.
But like even just like flipping through channels or like, oh,
Yeah.
there's a Bond marathon on because it's New Year's or whatever, and like it was never on. I never saw a picture of him, and then it just like I don't like I don't know. I mean, it doesn't help that the movie was such a hard left turn for the series. It doesn't help that they really just didn't fucking do marketing well at all. They just figured, it's Bond. People will see it. People will tell their friends, and nobody told their fucking
Yeah.
friends. Everybody just
No.
said, stay at home this week and watch Miami Vice.
I'll bet anything people didn't know.
Yeah, people
I
didn't
mean,
know.
yeah.
And anyone who saw it was like,
Yeah,
Right.
but Back to the Future Part 2 is out. And that
Yeah.
looks fun.
Yeah.
That's way later.
Whatever.
I think that's
Yeah.
December. But you were finishing.
No. Back to the Future Part 2, was that December? Let me double
No.
check on that.
Maybe November. I don't think it's summer. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at that year. So, but I'm just saying, like, you can pick anything out of a
I mean,
hat.
Rain Man is that fucking year. Twins is
Yeah.
that year. Like,
You can pick anything out of a hat that could have been
Twins is
out
a-
at that time, out of the summer, and like
don't knock Twins.
Christ,
not
All
knocking Twins.
Dogs
That
Go to
movie's-
Heaven came out that year.
I watched it a few weeks ago. That movie's insane. Nobody really talks about how crazy that movie is. Like,
It is
it's
nuts.
like, oh, it's the movie where Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger
No,
are
it's
twins.
nuts.
Isn't that funny? It's like an insane movie where like there's an assassin after them.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so
You moved
here,
too soon.
so Rick, to your point, yes, it did come out in November. Back to the Future Part 2, and while obviously it was too late to have any impact on Bond's box office, I think it's worth noting that around
Just a sequel heavy year.
Yeah, it's a sequel heavy year. Think about it. So we got Back to the Future 2, also some notable releases around November. All Dogs Go to Heaven, Little Mermaid, Steel
I think
Magnolias.
you mentioned the Disney Renaissance begins
Yeah.
there.
Steel Magnolias. And then when you get into December, you have National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which became which is a Christmas staple at this point.
Yeah.
You know, Driving Miss Daisy. We have Glory. Born on the 4th of July.
Really?
Yeah. We have
Whoa.
fucking Roger and Me come out that year. Tango and Cash. That's great.
Cash.
Tango and Cash.
If you ask me,
Yeah.
License to Kill would have probably done better the year before, and it's just a matter of them being a little too late.
Honestly, probably would have just done better in September.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, like September, there's nothing. It's what's it? I mean, what's it gonna get slapped around by Sea of Love?
Yeah.
It's gonna get
Hey,
beat
I
up
like
by
that
Black
movie.
Rain.
Well,
I'm not saying anything
you know what?
against the quality of the fucking movies, but like Johnny Handsome's not gonna fucking.
Holy
Johnny
shit, that was
Handsome.
89? Johnny Handsome.
Yeah,
I just saw that
Johnny-
last
yeah.
year.
But Tom, you bring up it's a good segue because it's the underperformance of this movie that kind of leads the Bond movies to then stop becoming part of the summer movie season, and then starts to become of the November, winter, almost holiday movie season. Like I think every Bond film since GoldenEye
Yeah.
has now come out around that season, with the exception of No Time to Die, because the initial release date was supposed to be April, and now we don't know when the fuck this movie's gonna come out, so who knows.
Gonna come straight to your brain when it finally comes out on Elon Musk's data theft project with David Cronenberg.
There you go.
It's
But,
kind of funny though how like
Just puts it in your gut. Oh my god!
Yeah. I thought it was kind of interesting that three out of the four Burton Schumacher Batman films, all three of those years coincided with another Bond release as well. 95 was Batman Forever
Joel
and
Schumacher
GoldenEye.
did 4
And
Batman movies.
The
What?
Schumacher should have directed a Bond.
I said Burton Schumacher.
Would have been
before
better than
Burton.
Die Another
Oh, the
Day.
Burton Schumacher. I got you. Okay.
So
It's funny though how the failure of this movie is kind of like the flip side to the success of Skyfall, because Skyfall was so successful. They now think like, oh, Bond's $1 billion franchise. It's gonna make $1 billion every time. And then Spectre was just like, nope.
nope.
And
Did well.
it's
Did very
it did.
well, but no.
But like No Time to Die is probably gonna be the same thing, where it's gonna be like, it'll probably make money, but you're fucking insane if you think this is
It has to be good. It has to be good. I think I mean, I have my reservations on Skyfall, but objectively, you have to admit, like, a lot of people were very happy with Skyfall, loved it. That's why it made $1 billion.
50-year anniversary.
Yeah, and then I think with Spectre, a lot of people were unsatisfied because it was too clever.
I mean, the fact that Spectre made almost $900 million at the box office, given how tepid the response is, kind of a small miracle.
Yeah, and I'll do the flips. To add to what Tom said, I'll even say it's also the flip side of Die Another Day, in that Die Another Day made the most money out of a very successful run financial wise with the Brosnan movies.
Yep.
But because it did, and I am a defender of Die Another Day with admitted, obviously it's got issues.
Yeah.
But with it made so much money, but they took it so far into comic book fantasy realm that where do you go from there?
Yeah,
and it's funny.
Other than it's like James Bond of Mars,
Yeah, for sure.
Please.
And John's like, yes.
I need that.
James Bond colonizes Barsoom.
Fuck yes.
Next assignment, Mr. Bond, get your ass to Mars.
He's doing four-armed Martian chicks, and they're
And fucking Desmond Llewellyn is just like a sentient rock or something.
It's still cute.
Willem Dafoe plays the villain.
Oh god, missed opportunities.
It's and again, another flip side funny thing about this is that the failure of this is very different than the failure of Spectre, which is that this movie failed among many other reasons because it was too different from the Bond formula, where Spectre was so trying hard to be Skyfall that it just could not be Skyfall. And everyone's just like, what the fuck are you doing? This is just like...
We talked about it on our episode. Yeah, it's like it's trying to be Skyfall along with remnants of those Brosnan Moore type humor.
It's like it's reheated Skyfall. It's just you got leftovers.
and then also trying to borrow a lot of retro concepts and beholden to the chronology of Bond as well. Like it has an identity crisis, I think was probably the best way we were able to describe it.
So I think honestly the best thing we gotta say, the thing that has to be said about these fucking movies is that they need to have an identity. That was that sunk License to Kill. It's sunk Spectre, and hopefully No Time to Die has a goddamn identity and isn't just trying to be something that's not James Bond. I mean, fucking Quantum of Solace trying to be Bourne. People fucking lost their goddamn minds about Quantum of Solace. Stop chasing. I mean, you could chase the trends without sacrificing your James Bondness.
And Tom, to your point, because I think it's fair to say that Casino Royale went the route that it did, in no small part because of the popularity of movies like Bourne. But Casino Royale had enough elements that still kept it a Bond film.
Campbell didn't rip off the style. He had his own taste. He had his own. He could keep the pace up with the Bourne movie, but he had his own way to shoot action. He had his own
controlled cameras.
It basically gave them the confidence to say, okay, people will take a serious spy movie seriously.
Yeah.
You could give these things a weight and a
Bond,
you know,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
you don't have to just you don't just have to be a like a clown show. You could like make it kind of dark and serious and have.
That's really what James.
We gotta have
Bond
Tom
is,
back for the Die Another Day one.
Yeah, please.
Oh man.
I'll wear my armor.
Fucking clown
my
show.
God. Rick, don't worry.
What
I'll be in the trenches with you, friend. I mean,
And what else
I don't
does-
care for that movie.
I'm
show
gonna
up
be
with?
like RoboCop getting shot by the SWAT team in
what
the
else
first
does
movie.
Q
Just
show
fucking,
up with?
I'm gonna be Switzerland on that episode.
Well, in some cases, one of the Bond movies does devolve into a literal clown show in Octopussy. So
Yep.
The dumbest.
what a
Oh,
fucking
man.
shithead movie. God damn.
Oh
it.
man.
And you know,
Love these
in,
goddamn
into
puppets.
more to Casino Royale, they treat it like Bond's a character again.
Well, they took it to like, okay, people are now ready for what Fleming was doing,
Right.
which is kind of where the Dalton movies weren't able to fully fly because they couldn't completely embrace the darkness that Dalton wanted to imbue in this role. Like, he's dark, but everything around him's kind of like, right, we're still in like a cartoon land where this wise old grandpa is showing up with fucking gadgets, and like villains are still kind of like got weird physical traits and stuff. It's no, just have Bond fight Nigerian warlords in
It's
a
a little
stairwell.
slight. It's a little slight. Lashif with the the drooly eye and all that shit. Does anyone want to mention how what the I don't know myself, so I'd love to hear it. What were the planned storylines or plots for the third Dalton outing?
The rumor.
There's
Go
actually
ahead,
a
Tom.
book that came out that gets into a lot of lesser known and untold Bond scripts and stuff, that like some unknown books or whatever. And this guy got a hold of 2 of the scripts, and god damn it, a lot of it has to do with Hong Kong. They were really hung up on Hong Kong, and they were not they weren't easing up on some of the cartoonish stuff, because in both of these scripts there's like heavy reliance on Bond ends up fighting a robot, and like a robot that looks like the robot from Chopping Mall.
Criterion Collection's Chopping Mall.
Criterion Collection's but like a lot of it was like, oh, kind of going back to the microchips thing of like a
View to a Kill.
Like a Hong Kong businessman who's like half Chinese, half British, is like trying to start some shit so he can
Rising Sun, but
yeah,
James Bond, Goofy,
and a lot of stuff like that. Like Taiga Tanaka's son comes back in to help him, and it's just like a lot of like this weird balance Living Daylights and License to Kill has of like, there's some heavy serious stuff to it, but then also again like Bond fights a goddamn chopping mall robot.
That's really funny because it's like the lawsuit with like because it's like a profit thing, right? They were like not denying Eon some profits or something like that, or distribution stuff.
Yeah. I believe so. I'm not necessarily sure.
No, that's really
but it's almost like fortuitous because it gives it a little bit of breath.
Yeah.
It, and I think we're all kind of defenders of Dalton. I think he was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
He just wasn't supported. Excuse me. He just wasn't supported by the movies.
Don't cry.
Overall.
Don't cry, Rob.
You okay, Tim? I mean, I still love Timothy. I think he's wonderful in other movies. I mean, Flash fucking Gordon, lying bitch. Like he's so good in that, and he's a
Rocketeer.
He's one of the great bad guys in any comic book movie. As
one of the best bad guys in any comedy. Slasher of crisis.
Must be stopped. Catch me later. Yeah, he's so fun. He's a really fun dude. He's a really fun actor, which is funny. Great. He doesn't get to show that as Bond. I think
it's funny that he didn't want to.
I think if they had supported him with like an edgy thriller, I think if they had given him some dark comedy, he could have been able to deliver it as sharply as Connery.
Yeah, exactly. Like if they had written the because I think the problem
not like that horrible bar scene in License to Kill.
Ooh, let's not talk about that. Or let's.
Where everyone just breaks out into a fight. It's just really, really weird.
It's weird. It's
one of the worst number 6 bar fights I've seen in a movie, can I just say. Despite all the really good stunt choreography, we didn't really get to talk much about it, but I thought that fucking bar scene was lame.
Yeah.
That's all.
No,
Need to
no,
say
no
that.
argument
You
here.
can just cut that.
Well, everyone just started
No, I'm
thinking
not
about it.
I'm not going to, because there's no. I mean, no argument. It's the truth.
Listen,
It's
Like, there were
fucking
literally
100%.
moments where I saw people lining up and being like, all right, now you're gonna hit me. And then
Needed-
and there was a whole moment where everybody was caked up together in a corner, like 12 guys be like, let them fight. And you're like, no, you're supposed to fight. It's a number 6.
Right.
What are you doing?
I was
weird.
just too busy thinking about Carrie Lowell putting a shotgun to my junk and getting
she
way
does.
too weirdly excited about it.
She does take said shotgun and she blows a perfect Looney Tunes hole
Yeah.
in the wall for Bond to get out of.
It's strange,
It's a
man.
very
And I
efficient
love it.
shotgun.
And I love that she just strolls through the hole and goes for the boat, not realizing that fucking Benicio del Toro is gonna just he's
Right
gonna
there.
kill me.
So funny. I just
Right.
watched that movie, what was it? The Long Kiss Goodnight, and Gina Davis does the same fucking move with her like 8-year-old. She like blows a hole through the wall in her house and throws her through it into a fucking clubhouse in a tree outside. And I'm like, works.
Hey, Rennie Harlan's on a different level than John
But
Glenn.
that's Rennie Harlan
Oh.
working with a Shane Black script.
Yeah.
I do wish though, like I kind of wish Shane Black would be able to remake the movies he wrote that weren't directed by him, because I don't know. I feel like Long Kiss Goodnight is maybe a little too Rennie Harlan long-headed.
It is. But you
Including
know,
Like,
Lethal
it's great.
Weapon?
It's great. Maybe not Lethal Weapon 1, but Lethal Weapon 2.
That's
'Cause
the
I
dark
kinda want
ending.
the-
Yeah,
Because
I know
want the
that.
one where Riggs dies.
Yeah, it was a big jungle battle and the fire and everything I remember reading about, and he was going to die, and that's right. Riggs,
Yeah.
that is. But I'm sure everybody was like, but money, more
50-50 on
movies."
Shane Black as a director, because I like his work as a director, but then he does a movie like, The Predator, and I want to.
But that
Predator
went through a
rules.
lot of production shit.
That's a movie that's so much better than it has any right to be, because it at least feels like Shane Black. Like, it doesn't feel like a 4-quadrant like production meeting. Like,
And I like the
stockholders.
practical, for the
Yeah.
most part, practical stuff.
I just see why you didn't get a lot of freedom after the non-success of The Nice Guys, which I love, but it just they didn't even. That's another movie that suffered from poor
Well,
marketing.
Tom, I remember you telling me about like the whole, and I have the original script actually. It's online, but the first time I heard it was actually, funny enough, a conversation with Tom where he told me about the whole third act is it like almost actually middle second to third act. It's total reshoots.
Completely reshot. Yeah, it has nothing like completely redone. And there's been
sucks.
interviews with Fred Decker talking about how like that's like we had a whole other thing and then they just said no and we had to reshoot it, and then they looked at what we shot and then they're like, no, you have to completely redo the ending again.
Yeah.
And it was just like, so that's why like I like the fact that it still has that Shane Black touch to it of those Dirty Dozen kind of guys just interacting and being fucking funny.
They're the best part of the film. It's a shame that it doesn't feel satisfying, at least as a movie.
No, but it's
fully,
like it still feels like a director made it and not fucking a theme park executive.
Yeah.
Like there's a touch to it. It's it's not Aliens versus Predator.
That's true. I mean, also Tom and I are also big defenders of Iron Man 3.
I think Iron Man 3 is really good.
I think Iron
Second
Man 3
best
is
Marvel
fantastic.
movie.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd rank it that high, but it's one of my favorites. I think it's probably my favorite of the.
I think
Iron
it gets
Man
shit on
films.
just because a lot of people were mad about the Mandalorian twist, and it just like upset them so that they kind of shit on a movie that was really, really well done.
Yeah,
Mandalorian twist.
Mandarin.
Not Mandalorian. I'm sorry, Mandarin.
Oh,
The Mandalorian was in Iron Man 3.
I forgot that.
I also think a lot of people get way too twisted about like, oh, he's barely in the Iron Man suit. So fucking what?
That's what made it exciting.
It's funny. He's getting into hijinks with a kid in the middle of America, and
he's vulnerable. Come on.
And he calls the kid a little pussy. Like, come on, it's funny.
Because we're connected. Yeah.
It's really great stuff. I mean, I mean, I love Shane Black, but yeah, no, God, we got off track. We got off track. But this is staying in the episode because I think there's a fascinating tangent that we went on. But just to bring it back on course. So we've talked about the issues of License to Kill the movie. We've talked about how it underperformed even during a summer where even the sequels that underperformed relative to their predecessors still did very well. Um, I still even doing a deep dive and all that, I still want to know what the fuck happened, because it didn't just underperform, I feel like it almost bombed.
Definitely in terms of domestic, it's almost like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a Bond movie, a James Bond movie.
The most American thing ever.
I mean, when you sit down and think about it, kind of.
No.
The films.
Look, incorrect.
Look.
No.
I think if I can give the answer first, at least my supposition on it, I think it's everything we talked about. It's almost a perfect storm of like you're about to crash into the wall of the and you're on the ocean,
Yeah.
That lighthouse is a fire and you're heading for shore. Now I'm just thinking of The Fog. My God, there was a fire. And I think it's a perfect storm from title change. Now the marketing is weak. To Dalton, it's only his second one. He's not quite as loved yet, if there was that possibility that he was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those big movies that are new, they're not old, or they're possibly maybe played out as Bond maybe felt to audiences then at that point. Compared to, holy shit, the guy from fucking, Road Warrior is now a fucking unhinged cop. You mean with the guy from Color Purple? Holy shit, and like,
I love Color Purple.
I love that movie. And
that
I love
a great movie.
It is a great movie.
This movie only made 35 million domestic.
Yeah, compared to everything else, making domestic.
That's 3 million more than its budget. It played for 24 weeks in America, and it opened to 8.7 million on 1,500 theaters.
Yeah, I think it was fatigue of the whole franchise, even though it's a new Bond technically still.
I mean,
and it's all those franchises, and on top of that, a big giant thing called Batman, which they're still making movies of.
Yeah, they are. I mean, look, I think it's one of those things where it was different for a Bond movie, but it wasn't different enough from the other offerings that were coming around the time that kind of like
especially taking on cartels. I wonder if people did see the trailer, or I don't know, I didn't look up the commercials or anything, if it just was. I mean, how many cop movies do we have? How many buddy cop movies do we have in the 80s where they're fighting drug dealers?
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about I think License to Kill, more so than any Bond movie, is the least escapist film. Yeah. Because even Casino Royale, which is probably the one that comes in second, but even that one, obviously terrorism is a very real.
But it's romantic.
But it's romanticized. It's turned.
No, I mean it's. I don't mean romantic. I mean it's a love story.
No, I mean
that's you're true. Emotionally involved, so you can really recommend that to people.
Exactly, that's true. But it's also there's enough of they did a good job of taking the central threat and making it grandiose and epic and almost in black and white terms.
And the comedy fits tonally.
Yes, it does.
Really does. I mean, the first initial action scene, the parkour stuff with the guy, it's funny, but simultaneously entertaining and awesome. That Bond, this guy's doing all this amazing athletics, and Bond's just bursting through a wall.
Yeah.
It's telling you about character, and it's making you laugh, and it's thrilling you at the same time. That's good action filmmaking.
Agreed.
And escapist while being emotionally involved.
No, for sure.
And I think, I was thinking about it as you were, to your point and what you were talking about, Tony, and it made me realize, imagine you go to see License to Kill and you try to recommend it. Oh, Bond fights all these drug dealers and all this stuff, and it's just well, that sounds like Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
So people aren't still.
That's not what I want to go to a Bond movie for.
Right.
I see that shit in the news, So,
Right.
I guess, yeah. I guess. I mean, I mean, we can ultimately only speculate, but like, I mean, the writing's on the wall in terms of what happened.
Hey,
What are you quoting a Bond song?
I did not meaning to.
Riders on the wall. I don't
No,
even remember
we're
how it
not
goes.
talking. We're not talking about that. We're not.
the first
Lordy.
Bond movie to reference hentai.
It's a thing. So yeah, guys, do we have any final thoughts on the monster year in cinema that was 1989 and how Bond kind of got
We
lost in
I'm
the?
I mentioned it earlier, but I looked while we were talking. There was not one good fucking horror movie released in 1989.
Oh no!
It's fucking insane. Like if
We
you look
did
at
get
it,
Robo Jocks, not a horror movie, but we got
we
Robo
did get
Jocks.
like the closest to a good horror movie we got was Pet Cemetery, and that's played more like a dark comedy and not a horror movie. Like
I
it's
like
insane.
the third act of The Fly 2.
Was that 89 or was that 88?
It was 89 February. Yeah.
Okay. But well, still, like there's a lot of like it's okay, but or well,
Sure,
it's good,
sure.
but or like Jason Takes Manhattan. It's dumber than a bag of shit, but I enjoy it. It's like there's not like Halloween died. Elm Street is on its way out. Jason's dying. Fucking Fright Night Part 2 didn't light up the screens, you know.
I mean, Tom, you could argue that that's it. 89 is the death of horror for a while.
It's dead until 96.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I
like
mean,
even though we get Jason Goes to Hell and Freddy's Dead, those are like real whimpers compared to their
and those
heyday.
come out like in 94 and 95.
Right.
Know?
Right.
Like, we don't get anything until horror doesn't come back till 96. There's some big like highs until then, like you'll get a Silence of the Lambs or a Candyman or a New Nightmare, but there's not like you're not looking at the fucking receipts of 91, 92 and seeing fucking like 50 horror movies where you're like,
Well,
that's
yeah,
actually at least
or
watchable.
Hollywood would disguise them, like you mentioned, Silence of the Lambs. I would argue Cape Fear is really a horror movie, but
Yeah.
like it's disguised. It's not,
Yeah,
you know, it's like
it's disguised and like kind
yeah,
of
you know, it's
melded
not,
with,
no,
like,
it's not
the-
horror, guys. It's a thriller.
It's
you know?
thriller.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a thriller. Yeah.
No, for sure. I totally agree with that. John, do you have any final thoughts on the monster year that was 1989?
No.
I'll say this, and I think also maybe also to the Bond thing, action movies, they're bigger than ever at that point in '89.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, even Batman's
Batman's an
technically an
action.
action flick. You know, he's
Yeah.
flying through the fucking city. You know, like
Yeah.
Jesus. You know,
even
I
though
have
the action-
nothing. I have nothing to add that hasn't already been said because it was such a huge year, and you can say anything more interesting about any other movie that came out that year than
the best performance that year was by Terry Kaiser in Weekend at Bernie's.
a Friday
I
the
mean-
13th film from New Blood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's right, parts. That's
I
right.
think the
parts.
only thing I
Also
haven't
on
really
Tammy
pointed out
Faces.
was that it was a really interesting year for independent cinema.
Yeah.
It was a very confusing year for independent cinema because while there were TV movies still hitting the airwaves being made on low budgets, there were like smaller budget films that were aiming for TV syndication and or TV video release. And then then that meant the marketability of crazy art house shit was up. So you had weird ass movies like Hard to Be a God, which had a theatrical run and then probably had a VHS release, you know, and that's unprecedented now where you'd get a hard media release of a really obscure, odd science fiction movie that takes place in an alternate timeline reality,
yeah.
another planet, shot all in black and white.
It's just strange because that's the thing. I know nothing about any of these movies that John just mentioned. And hold on,
But that's
hold
what I'm
on.
saying. Yeah.
No, but
that's-
exactly, and I know nothing about this. But again, I said this before in this episode. It's just kind of crazy how this one year, no matter where you fall on your cinematic spectrum, 89 almost feels like this crucial decision point, like this fulcrum where everything kind of interjects, where there's something important that happened. If you're a fan of cinema in '89, it almost feels like if Barry Allen were to go back in time and create the Flashpoint,
Anyway,
the Flashpoint alternate universe, he would travel to 1989.
I just think
Who?
the only point I was gonna make was really like, I mean, yeah, there's something for on everyone's radar, and also the prospect that everything that came out, if you didn't catch it in theaters, you're gonna rent it.
Everybody saw it on video. Looking. I just saw again Henry the fucking Fifth. Kenneth Branagh came onto the fucking world,
So
and
it's
then
like,
My Left Foot is 2 weeks later.
and that goes to show just like the marketability of movies at the time, like the risks that people are willing to make. It was because like, hey, if we don't make our money back in the theaters, we'll always see it on tape. And so there was always that prospect, and so that's why I think we had such a wide variety of movies that came out that year. And that's all I'm gonna say.
War of the Roses. The end.
That's all I have to add.
Hey, no, and I thank you for adding it. I think it's important.
We got Meet the Feebles that year.
Meet the Feebles. I've never seen that.
That's
a
very early Peter Jackson movie. Educate yourself.
Whoa.
I mean, treat yourself. Check it out. It's interesting. It's crazy.
Goodness gracious, the aggressiveness. No, I should know
puppets.
Yeah, I mean, I should know Meet the Feebles. I'm a Lord of the Rings geek, so
if you're a Muppets fan, you'll love Meet the Feebles.
I do love me some Muppets.
Yeah, that's one way to say
it. So for me, 89. I wanted to end it on a lighter note. 89 really did see some because I was a year old when in 89. I was born in 88. So 89 kind of had such an impact on me as a burgeoning in terms of the films that came out in that year. It just kind of seems to be that at different points in my life I go back to a movie that's like key that came out that year. I mean, like, when I was a kid, growing up on Little Mermaid and growing up on 89 Batman. When I was a teenager, discovering Back to the Future and Indiana Jones for the first time, so going back and watching those movies, and obviously rediscovering the Bond films, kind of having this growing appreciation for The Living Daylights, and into my adulthood, going back and watching Dead Poet Society and stuff like that. And like, hey, this is all of this came out in this really wonderful year of cinema. But yeah, I think guys, this is probably been one of my favorite episodes that we
real quick. I saw
did.
a lot of these movies in theaters.
Yeah,
that was like a burgeoning year for me seeing movies.
No, for sure. But yeah, guys, thank you so much. I mean, I don't know about you, I felt that this was one of our best episodes. A great discussion. We did a little bit more beyond than we typically do, but I think that it was worth it, and I think we're gonna play with this format and do it again. You Know His Name will return with we're going to talk about Quantum of Solace, Daniel Craig's second James Bond film. And we're going to break down what is currently the shortest James Bond film and one of the most confusing, I think it's safe to say. Spastic, definitely spastic. So yeah, so from John, from Rick and I, Tom, thank you so much for joining us this month. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your insight.
Come back again.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back, brother.
I'm always down to talk about the movies, the motion picture films, as Rudy Ray Moore likes to
make a motion picture.
The motion picture films.
A motion picture film. It's all I'm good at, so invite me back so I don't feel completely useless.
Well, Tom, you're good at more than just that. You're not just a hell of a film cinephile. You're also a hell of a guy, and again, a hell of a friend. So I thank you so much for joining us today. Thank
John
you guys.
We're not good people.
John and Rick are terrible.
It's all right.
It's okay. No, I've seen what you did to the food you served.
You promised you'd never tell.
So from all of us that You Know His Name, thank you guys for joining us. Please stay safe out there, and remember, nobody does it better. Good night.